Hello and welcome once more to Conscious TV. I'm Ian McNay and my guest today is Bruce Frantzis. Hi Bruce.
How you doing?
And Bruce is a remarkable character, full of energy, and you'll realise why I'm saying that during the interview. And he's written about a dozen books, and I've got 3 here which I researched. Opening the Energy Gates of Your Body, Qigong for Lifelong Health, which I think he wrote about 20 years ago. The Tao of Letting Go, Meditation for Modern Living. And Relaxing into Your Being, Tao Meditation, Volume 1. This is only a snapshot of what he does and his story, if you like. So we usually start at Conscious TV talking about the person's life and how they've got to be where they are. And one of the fascinating things I found with you when I was researching your past was you actually, when you were 6 or 7 years old, you started to do a self-inquiry technique. How did that start?
Well, I can't tell you how it started, but the idea just kind of popped into my head. Okay, who am I? And so what I did is what I thought up on myself, which I hate to say it wasn't terribly original. It was Ramana Maharshi's basic method. It's just, okay, who are you? And come up with, I'm something. Okay, I'm the kid who rode a bike. I ate an ice cream cone. I don't know. I go to the bathroom in the morning. Whatever it is, and just the second part is very simple. You just ask yourself, if that wasn't so, would you still be here? Yep, you're still here. And so anyway, I got into doing this, 3, 4, 5 hours a day. Some of it because I was in a.
You were doing it 3, 4, 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
6, 7 years old.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
I don't know if it's extraordinary or not, but anyway, as a kid, I used to read, and I went to one of these boarding schools where they had like super great woods, and so I couldn't do sports. I mean, I was in the lowest level of physical coordination a human being could have. As a matter of fact, we even had, they used to measure us twice a year for physical intelligence and mental intelligence. I define the mental part, the physical part. Sometimes I'd say you're in the bottom 5%. I'd almost start to whine, and this guy would just say, be glad we don't have a lower rating. And I had no physical coordination. So I just walked through the woods and, I'd do whatever I did. And I would do this while I would walk through the woods, and I'd wake up in the morning before I did whatever jazz and go, I just keep on doing this.
But the other kids weren't doing this, were they?
No, but I didn't even tell anybody I was doing it.
Yeah. It sounds remarkably self-assured for a kid of that age.
That I couldn't tell you. That would be someone else's comment. It just seemed kind of natural for me to do.
Okay. And then I gather around 12 years old, a friend of yours got quite badly beaten up.
No, it wasn't anybody I knew.
Okay.
I used to collect comic books.
Okay.
And there was this place uptown, I'm from Manhattan, up in Washington Heights. There was a good place to buy comic books,
Yeah.
Buy low, sell high, all that kind of stuff. I collect them, buy them, and sell them, and trade them. Anyway, I'm walking back one time, back to the subway, and it's like across the street, some guy is, screaming, give me my $20, you, and let's just say there were a lot of expletives at the end of that. I watched him whip a guy to death. In New York, they call a car aerial whipping. You tear an aerial off a car, and then you whip the person with it till they're quite dead. Anyway, I'm seeing this, and I'm going, and I'm standing there like frozen. And then finally, whenever it was done and at least everybody around was screaming he's dead, I just got out of there. Because the one thing in New York City is like you don't want to be around when the cops come. It doesn't matter if you're innocent or guilty. That was just the basic principle. Get out of there, Who knows what they're going to have on their mind. So this goes on, and not very long later, maybe 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, who remembers? 12 years old is not exactly, bright memory spot for time. But in the schoolyard, and I grew up on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, which is like in London, Mayfair. It was at that time the wealthiest place on the planet, period. And the state school, the junior high school, middle school, that's what they call it now, junior middle school, I went to was like, pretty high class place. But they had this thing in New York where you could bus people in from different places to make it accessible to quote unquote the democratic thing, right? Well, there's this one kid, and he had a wise mouth. And there's a Puerto Rican kid, Hispanic kid, and he's really like, how much can I verbally cut this guy to rhythms, right? And the guy's going, you don't want to do that. You're making me upset. You're making me feel bad. You don't want to do that. Well, okay, after this goes on 3 or 4 times, and each time the kid is getting to be more and more of a wise whatever, the guy just takes out a knife, slits his guts, And they're basically falling out of his shirt. Okay, good. At that moment, having been in a boarding school, I got, I've heard New York can be rough, but yeah, it can be very rough. So then some days later, on the subway, you take subways in New York when you're kids, and big sign, judo, fear no man. I said, yep, that's me. So anyway, my grandfather had been a wrestling champion in Greece before he came to America. And don't ask me how I talked him into it, but I did. And then, I spent a couple of hours with a guy who throws you and, good. Like they want you I wouldn't give the guy the satisfaction. He pounded the living crap out of me for hours. I mean, I literally had trouble walking up the stairs afterwards. But it just ignited something. And then a little while later, I saw in a kind of a storefront, I saw people doing karate. Didn't know what it was. That was it. So next thing I know, I'm going into that, and at that stage of the game, basically, I'm doing martial arts 3, 6, 8 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week.
But why did you do it for so long? Because I understand you wanted to be in a situation where you weren't...
Okay, wait. This is the common misconception people have.
Yeah.
Okay, first you're doing it because you're scared, right? This is different than now.
I
It's part
that.
of my spiritual, No. After a couple of years, I wasn't worried about any criminal coming at me because I could take someone out with one shot with no problem. Seriously, I mean, as the phrase goes, they had the problem, not me. No, but there's an art to fighting. Now, nowadays we live in such a safe, whatever period, but I'm only 20 years from World War II and 15 from the Korean War. That was a time when people went into bars, men got upset with each other, and they beat the crap out of each other. It was a time when people going at it was not weird. It was the manly thing to do. Anyway, and that's not that way now. It's really not that way now. Now you're an axe murderer if you do that, whatever. But back in that era it was, but also at that time New York City had 3,000 murders a year. So let's just put it this way, and a lot of it was random. So, but that's a different thing than fighting or martial arts is, if you get past the initial thing of defending yourself, and it's not about defending yourself, it's about winning. It's an art. There is an art to fighting.
So you wanted to go into it as totally as you could?
I went into it as totally as I could. I figured what I wanted to, I did.
Okay.
And it's an art. I mean, it's the same drive that make a person be a painter or a musician.
Yes.
I mean, pick your art,
So you saw that as your expression, as your art at that time?
I never thought of it as my expression. It's just that the more I did, the more I wanted to do. I had passion for it. That was it. I had a passion. It was like a well, and once it was hit, it never stopped.
And also around the same time, you started Zen, too.
Yeah. As part of this, I didn't do Zen Buddhism for spirituality. I mean, I heard it was spirituality, but I didn't even think what I did as a kid was spirituality. I just thought it was good common sense to find out who you were. Okay, that's it. That's really all I thought about it. But they have
You
this thing.
said something very deep. Good common sense
Yeah.
to find out who you were,
Yeah,
who
absolutely.
you are.
Yeah, sure.
And that, to me, is common sense, and to you, but to most people, it doesn't enter their thought system.
Well, we live in a society that's utterly numb. And a lot of the spiritual dimension is just so much blah, 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 blah. You're supposed to believe in this, you're supposed to believe in that. No, there actually is a real drive towards spirituality. It's as live and living and vibrant as anything is. And I have to say something, there's a phrase, for example, I wrote it in a book there, but it's a big phrase in Taoism. It's called being fully alive or being fully conscious. And they take that reverse it. Oh, you think it's cool to be dead. You want to be half dead. You want to be numb. Okay, if I can sell you a weakness pill so you can be weak and affectionate, feel like you're dying at every moment, everything is a massive gray depressive zone, would you buy? I don't think anybody would. Well, let's put it this way. I don't think anybody who was even marginally healthy would. Okay? They wouldn't do it. So this idea, and I always found that the things I did, they made me more alive. Now, I was going back because I left the Zen thing. Okay, so in martial arts, there's a big thing. It's called without hesitation. Boom, you want to go, you go. You want to cut, you cut. You don't go, oh, should I? Oh, can no, boom, go. Because in martial arts, you don't do that, basically. You get your clock cleaned. I mean, you got troubles, like you're hit, you're hurt, you're thrown. So, okay, so this was the whole thing. The Japanese samurai, they did Zen so they could pull their sword and slice somebody without hesitating. Okay, cool. I went to that. I wanted a better punch. I wanted a better throw. Okay, seemed like a good strategy for getting it. So what you do in a sesshin in Zen, is you sit for 2 weeks. You don't talk. You eat, you don't talk.
So you look at a wall when you sit with your eyes open?
Well, I mean, sometimes they'll have you look at a wall, you'll just look in the air. I mean, really, or you'll close your eyes. I mean, it depends. Bodhidharma, the original person, he looked at a wall for 9 years until he could hear the ants scream. But he was, shall we say, slightly more intense and like definitely into it about as far as you could go. But most of us don't, you know. In the beginning, you don't go that far. But at some point, you know, I don't know, someplace past the middle, I never visualized. I don't particularly dream. I mean, I don't remember dreams. You know, there's about 5% of the population that don't, and I'm one of them. But in the middle of this thing, I'm sitting there, my eyes are closed, and it's as vibrant as if I'm in the studio. And all of a sudden, I'm in old Japan. And all of a sudden, some guy is like, I'm in a sword fight. And then I get like split right down the middle, and I go through the death process. And I go through the whole thing, and it was incredibly vivid. You're dying, your consciousness leaving your body, it's over, it goes. Now, I came at the end of that different. Most people go like, Ramana Maharshi did that, but then he realized, oh, and I have to go into spirituality, he goes into a cave for 13 years and blah, 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 which I thought was a really great thing to do, personally. But it wasn't my scene. I can remember, I was only there to like, you know, learn how to punch without hesitation. I wasn't looking for some grand spiritual whatever. I mean, 14, I was kind of like, it wasn't really in my mind. But what I got from that is that, wait a second, this death thing, that's the worst that can happen to you? So, okay, what the hell, anything else is fine. I mean, don't do something stupid like getting yourself maimed because you got to live with it. But, and basically, I kind of lost primarily the fear that drives most people's lives.
Yes.
I just lost it. I mean,
you lost it at 15, 16?
14. I mean, it was just kind of like, it wasn't that I was courageous, it became irrelevant. Because then, you know, because the bigger problem about death is not when you die. And I've actually crossed hundreds of people over. You know, like they die, and like we get them where they got to go next. But the bigger thing about it is that when anybody's afraid of death, two things. They're afraid. Then they're afraid of the unknown. And you don't let go and just say, okay, here's life, let's go for it. Whatever it is, whatever it's not, we're going to find out afterwards. Because you sure don't know when you start. And I got over that, so I had hundreds of points in my life where so many things. I could have just gone, oh, I'm afraid I'm not going to do it, I'll close down, I won't do it. I was like, no, whatever, go.
Anyway, we have to move on a bit faster.
Go on fast. Okay, so that was the Zen thing. That was the Zen thing.
Yeah. And then at 18, you went to Japan.
Yeah, after I had 8 black belts, and I had won like
you had
8.
By the time you were 18?
By the time I was 18.
Okay.
And I'd already taught a couple of thousand. By the time I was 18, there were 40 people who got karate black belts. My name was on the signature. Okay. I was in that field somewhat. The term prodigy could be used. I just would say I was a bit more talented than some. But at 18, I said, okay, look, you want this thing. It's Japanese martial arts, it's Zen, it's shiatsu, you do all the, okay, wait a minute, where's this stuff come from? Let's go to the source. So I went to Japan. And then, you know, I did the whole thing. The team won the All Japan Karate, and I was on the thing. I did all that kind of stuff. And so that was that. So I turned down some scholarships to, like, you know, the best universities in the United States. I actually had to go and make the money to go to Japan on my own. But that was okay. I mean, you know, my grandfather really flipped out. You're not going to go there? Oh, brother, I'm telling you, he was not happy. And he just said, I'm not going to help. No one of my family's. So I just went and made the money by myself.
You got to Japan, and one of the first things that you learned, I think, was the difference between the internal and the external.
Well, that took a little while. I had done Aikido.
You were very focused on the outside, weren't you?
Karate, judo, jiu-jitsu, that was swords, sticks. But then, beside the fact I did Aikido in America, I then studied with the founder of Aikido, a man called Ueshiba, and then you started getting there really was an inside. And then I went to Taiwan and I learned with a person.
So explain the difference between the inside and the outside. We can see it obviously in terms of, yes, you're fighting with martial arts on the outside, but it goes deeper than that, doesn't it?
Several things. You can fight based on a strong mind, based on developing your muscles and reflexes, training your motor functions, and going back again, having a strong enough mind to actually put them in action. This is not actually terribly different from what an Olympic athlete does. That essentially describes the process of becoming an Olympic athlete. Yeah, sure, you have to have a tough mind, but blah, blah, blah. But still, your body is something outside you. They're outside you. When you start moving into the internal stuff, you start learning how you don't get your power from your muscles. You open up the energy channels inside your body, and you shoot something through them, and all of a sudden, you've got many times the power you could get physically. Or even if you don't, you have some other things. To get this power to come from inside you, this chi, this energy from inside you, you have to learn how to completely relax.
So chi, which we hear a lot in modern society, that basically means internal energy.
That's
that
internal
correct?
energy, yes. That is one of the translations of the word. But that's what is internal energy. But to get there, to really mobilize chi at its highest level, what I did, because there are middle and lower gradations of it, you have to learn how to really relax. Now, to really relax your muscles is hard enough. Then to really relax your energy, that's really harder. And then to really relax the mind that's behind it, that's really harder. So I ended up switching into what they call the internal martial arts that are based on that. And then that was the beginning of when I got far enough down that road. That was then a long period of real full contact competitions without much rules, where people just got seriously rough. You know, there wasn't, you can't do this, you can't do, what about, do anything you want, you know? But that, I did it through internal energy. Because even when I was weighing in those days 150 pounds, I was taking 300-pound people out with one shot.
But you had to learn your lessons, didn't you? Because there was people that were also seemed to be weaker than you that were taking you out too. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got my first hit of that in Japan with this little judo guy who was like 4'11", who was like tossing me around like a rag doll. Ueshiba was maybe 5 feet tall, and he's tossing me around no way but loose, and sometimes you could even do it like literally just having one finger on you.
And they were doing it with internal energy primarily.
The judo guy wasn't. He taught me how to use your hips. Boy, could he use his hips.
Okay.
But Ueshiba, it was with energy. Wang Shujing later on, the people I did in China, they were doing it with their energy. I mean, I can remember one of the first times I was fighting with Wang, he just did this light top on the top of my head. I felt like an electric lightning bolt went through me, and all of a sudden, I was in a full squat on the floor, and I did not even see how I got from the top to the bottom. But you learn these things. This is not any different than in yoga, real yoga. I mean, I know there's all this malt yoga, which is like gymnastics by any other name. Because I actually did real yoga in India. I did it up in the high Himalayas. I did it with the people that did it from the whole spiritual point of view. But when they start talking about prana, and they talk about opening up the channels, these little funny pictures, you know, with channels and chakras, well, you know something? It's for real. But it's not for real if you can't manifest it inside you. Then it's a pretty picture book.
So we all have it inside us.
Yes.
It's just that most of us have either lost touch or never been in touch with it in the first place. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I would say a lot of babies are in touch with it, but it doesn't take very long. They hear enough no's or whatever, and they start mimicking the giants, and it goes away. You know.
So unless their parents are very aware of chi, they're not going to have any schooling, if you like.
No, that's right. That's right. But the question you're asking, it is innate to human beings.
Yes. And does a person's chi vary? Are some people born with a stronger chi than other people?
Yes. Some people are born with dramatically stronger chi than others. But if you, let's say, take martial arts, or you people who do qigong, or you take people who do Taoist yoga, which is not Hatha yoga, it's not the Indian trip, it's China's trip, that the whole thing is famous for people who were incredibly sickly and weak and terribly weak constitutions, did something, and then they became like virtual supermen or superwomen. So yes, it can be developed like anything. You know, you can develop, let's just say, intelligence to a certain degree. Or you can develop muscles, but you really have to use them to develop them. It's not going to happen because, oh, wow, that's a wonderful idea. How many people are running around? Wow, Warren Buffett's got $40 billion. Wow, hey, I just got to buy something and sell it for a higher price. Well, you know, but not that many people actually pull it off. So to pull it off, as the phrase goes, it's the joke there is, it's like the ham sandwich and the pig. You find the ham sandwich interesting, the pig is committed. I mean, you do it, And you do it all, and then
So you
it's
have
possible.
to basically nurture your chi,
Absolutely.
strengthen your chi. Yeah?
Yes.
I think we have to skip through your story because
That's
it's.
fine.
But I'm just going to highlight certain things. A few years later, you were in India and you got hepatitis,
Right.
and you almost died. And there's a wonderful example in one of your books where you talk about how you realise if you just lay in the bed, you'd end up dying. So you forced yourself to get up, sit up, I think, and do some qigong, and that got something started going again.
Well, to be precise, what happened is that I was in this room and 3 of us had it. And I watched the 2 people die.
That's a pretty good indication of what might happen.
Yeah, and the doctor comes in basically and is saying, if there is anybody you want to write some letter or something, I would do it now. Because it is not looking like you are going to be here very long. Okay? In other words, he gave me a death sentence.
Okay.
So I'm lying on the bed, and I've also worked as a doctor, and I've worked with terminal cancer. I know, let's just say I'm more than vaguely familiar with death, and leave it at that. And I knew one thing. I say, you stay on this bed, you're dead. There's a feeling that comes over you. There's a whole consciousness that do something or leave your body, and that's it. So I got up, and don't ask me how I got up, and I started doing Tai Chi, and I started just running the energy through my channels. And I have to say, up to that point in my life, that is the single most painful period of time I ever had. Because when you have a channel in your body that's closed and you're sick, it's the closing of the channel that makes you sick. But when you try and open it up, that does not mean that you're trying to open up something it doesn't want to, that it's going to be fun. Maybe fun, may not be fun, hard to say. In this case, I'm telling you, it was like serious ouch. Serious ouch. It's the only thing I can say. I mean, really. Half the time I was doing it, tears were just streaming down my face, and I was shaking like, you know. But I kept doing this, and then I like fell asleep, I collapsed. And 3 days later I woke up and then, you know, kind of slowly recovered.
So by doing that, you got your chi moving again, and your chi could help with the healing process.
Sure. I opened up the channels.
Open the channels up.
Channels of body open, healthy, strong, happy. Channels of body closed down, miserable, sick, weak.
Yes. And there was another quite dramatic example many years later again. You were in Denver and you had a bad car accident.
New Mexico, actually, but yeah.
Sorry?
New Mexico, yeah. I went 15 feet up in the air and came down the hard way.
And 2 of your vertebrae were quite seriously damaged.
Basically, I was diagnosed with a broken back. They wanted to fuse it and do the whole thing. But you know, the term broken back is always a bit tricky because most people think it's a severed spinal cord, of which there is no way back. No, I just had all the vertebrae cracked wide open, which is usually which is commonly called a broken back. Yeah.
Yes, which not only is very painful, it's very restricting as well.
You could say that.
Yes. So how did you approach that? Because I know that took you on quite a emotional journey as well in terms of how you...
Now I'll take this from the spiritual perspective because I wear many hats. I am a martial art master, and in China I'm pretty much recognized as that. And when I was a healer, I did 10,000 patients. I did, like, you know, in terms of energy medicine, I did like the more far out miracle stuff. But then also meditation, as you said, I started when I was a kid, but I became a lineage holder in Taoist meditation, which means you know it. You know whatever it is. Let's not go into what it is, but whatever it is, you know it. When that happened, there were 2 stages to it. Before that time, I had a specialty for at least 5 years. I was a real whiz with working with nerves. For example, one of the things that, you know, like, you're really good, me and a few other people did it. Someone had been in a wheelchair for 10 years and never gotten up. We got him walking, which is skill. That's serious skill because you got to go in every little channel and the way it connects with it. It's complicated. Let's just leave it at that. So anyway, the least is that, and all sorts of people had all kinds of accidents, and so I mean, I knew what the reality was. So, you know, it wasn't actually right after the accident. I did that for the book, but it was like 2, 3 times. I had a couple of destabilizations. And then finally, when my back just finally totally gave out, I'm lying there and I'm in bed and I can't feel anything from the waist down. Which I have to tell you does not make you happy. But at that moment I said one thing, do qigong and open up these channels, otherwise you are in serious trouble. Because I did not want to be one of those people in the wheelchair, right? Doctors wanted to fuse my back, the whole thing, and I said, no, because I also knew that if they fused my back, I would be diminished for life, and there would be no way back from it. There's no return. So I'm now spending a couple of weeks until finally I can just get some, I'm moving into the upper of my body until finally I got something to go down there. And then it took another, couple of weeks before kind of things would start returning. Okay, so that's from the physical point of view. And I got up and let's just say it was a couple of rough years. I mean, you'd be surprised how much pain your back can give you.
I would like to go into this more because it wasn't just the physical pain, but it was also...
That's where I'm going next.
Fine.
That is where I'm going. Now, that's not the spiritual part. That is just called the deal with your body, or your body will show you just how much suffering you can go through. Okay, but something else happened. At the time that occurred, I had done all these trainings to be able to control my energy to such a finite degree. Well, in my family, I have, let's just say, one of the people who raised me, and let's keep this non-personal, was mad as a hatter. Okay, I mean mad as in mental institutions where they are friends. And a lot of the stuff they did to me as a youth was rather rough. Nothing to do with me getting into martial arts. I was just pissed off in general maybe, but I didn't get into it for that. I was into the art of it. But I had all this stuff. Think about every control mechanism you have for the demons in your unconscious. All of them. And all of a sudden, boop, we open it up. Pandora, come out wherever you are. Now, to say that, I went through a couple of years of not just emotional, not just mental, but psychic turmoil, and I opened up the doors of karma, full flush. No filters, took it full bore on. Fighting a human being is one thing. Fighting that, oh boy, that's all I have to say. That was really trippy. But not to say that it wasn't rather miserable, because it was, but it forced me. And I also was up for it because I had done like years of meditation. I had spent cave time, did all this kind of weird stuff. I was interested in waking up. That was the most important thing in my life, period. And I did a lot of other kind of fun stuff too. And I took it on, and I really took it on. And then I go to Beijing, and my teacher, who was like what in the West you'd call living Buddha in Taoism, they call it spiritual immortal, he just said, oh, you want to know who you are, huh? Are you sure? He says, well, think carefully. Make sure you're sure. You may find it more difficult than you think. So in other words, so this is what happens, right? As an example, one time, things were going on, and he gave the bit about, the Buddhist bit, because, Taoist Buddhists, there's certain things that are in common in Chinese culture. He's going, about, your mother, and what? About how you should love your parents. What? Seriously, because I hated him. It was a love-hate relationship. I make the joke, but it's not. That's how strong it was. It's a good thing it was illegal to kill your parents when I was a kid. I might have done it. The things that happened were like, let's not discuss grim. Really, we're still on the light end of the thing. Really crazy stuff. So anyway, so he finally said, okay, and 9 months. After 9 months of things where so many things happened that were like too much, and I met people who had been through stuff that there's no way I could take what happened to me that seriously. I had 1 unit of grief, they had 1,000. Because the Cultural Revolution in China was made, Nazi Germany and Stalin's Russia seem like a party. We in the West don't know about it. That is probably the darkest, egregious nastiness humans can do to humans that's existed in the history of the earth. And the West knows nothing about it. Nothing. Because they didn't air their dirty laundry. You know why? They didn't lose to anybody. They weren't the enemy. Nobody even knew what they were doing over there. They kept the doors closed. But anyway, 9 months, I'm done with my mother. Done. Like nothing. Like nothing. Like I could remember it happened.
So I just want to go a little bit more
Let me just
detail.
finish this. Let me just, and we will, and I'm not trying to do that. Then, sometime in the next year, because who in God's name can remember time, I'm sitting in Canton, and I found out who I was. From the classic thing of Ramana Maharshi saying, who are you? And then my teacher just said, you've made some small progress. That's good. At least that particular question that was bothering you is over. Now, there's stuff that's even more important. And that's when we began the process of internal alchemy. And that's about the universe. That's not about me and this thing we all run through. Please, sir.
Well, when you say you found out who you were, that's a far more intriguing thing. How was that to find out who you are?
Well, the way it happened, I wrote about it in a book, and I mean, I just did it because whatever. No, I was in Canton, coming from Hong Kong, and back in those days, there were no, radar. So we were grounded. There was water. You couldn't fly because they didn't have the technology to enable you to, take off and land in that kind of rain. So I'm in, this Chinese dormitory, because I was living pretty close to the bone, and, it was 8 beds in the room or something, and I just had nothing to do, and so I just started meditating. Well, make it close, for about 3 days, all I did was meditate. I didn't do anything. And at one point, it just happened that, it's funny, everybody thinks they are, their personal history, this happened, that happened. Some people like to get egregious, oh, in this life I was this and that past. But regardless of what this life, this time, that time, you think all this stuff that happened to you, everything you think, everything you've seen, whether it's a television program or it's your deeply rooted philosophical beliefs, and you think that's who I am. And I just kind of really got it. It was in one sense, that there was always an image that after this was over, I thought of it. It actually wasn't like that at the time. A bit like everything, just floating in this giant suspension thing. And then all of a sudden, you saw what it was suspended in and not all the jazz that was in it. And it was like all of a sudden, boom, you really aren't anything. No. And there's this thing that's there, but it isn't anything in particular. It isn't a big deal. It's no big, the great event, no fireworks, no LSD colors, just that's what it is. And that's what's at the bottom of all of it. And everything is actually just attaching to that. And it never changed. It wasn't like it happened and then next week something else happened. It was that way. It's always been that way. And I write about in my books, I write about what that technically is in terms of Taoism, because they've been doing this for thousands of years, and this has happened to a lot of people. So it's not like it's a unique event. Of course, when it happens to you, it's a unique event to you because it's unique because you're you and there's nobody else who's you. But the fact of the matter is that to get that, and it's just, it's not, even the word space doesn't encompass it. It's space, and that's the kind of space you operate in. That's your, as they would have said, that's your vibe. The analogy I use for it, which I think is a good one in the sense that it's actually what they're dealing with in Tibetan Buddhism. They have all these deities, right? Picture of Avalokiteshvar, all these tankas, all these pictures, and, the deity's this and the deity's that, and the deity's having sex with someone, and the deity's sitting by itself, and the deity's got a nasty face and standing on somebody's head. These are just different ways a person's energy could manifest in the entire universe. And, okay, you got whatever yours is, or call it a cell in your body. Okay, a liver cell is not the same thing as a brain cell, as a foot cell. But excuse me, they're all stem cells at the end of the day. Well, you find out what your stem cell is, and that still isn't, you could say, that is not your potential, that is just the basic carrier wave you ride. And then the whole process of alchemy is learning how to change each of those into another kind of cell, until what the Tao is saying, this I only can take on hearsay because I sure can't do it, that it's, then when you go through enough of them in the universe, all of a sudden, you get what the universe is. But you sure got to have some idea of what your own particular thing is. So in a sense, if you're not separate, you're separate and you're not separate. Everybody's a stem cell, but that's a different matter than you actually get what the universe is as a whole in all places, times, dimensions. That's kind of a bit of a jump beyond who are you.
Okay. Thank you. So I was also very intrigued by the relationship between the nervous system and qi, because as I understand it from reading your books, basically when the nervous system gets jammed up, gets constricted, that is constricting the qi, and the qi basically needs the nervous system to be open to flow well. Am I simplifying there, or is that the basic?
Partial. Okay, let's put it this way. Qi, everything, electricity's got to travel through something. Is it fiber optics? Is it, radio waves. It's got to travel through something, right?
Yes.
So let's just call chi is electricity, and then it has to travel through different things in order to express itself and receive and give, okay? In a human being, in terms of a practice that you can do, in terms of gaining access to it, rather than it's just there, you have several levels of chi. The primary one, and the biggest way it travels through your body. Let's leave your mind out of it for a bit, because some of that isn't even physical. It's non-local, so it doesn't really much matter. Your brain only interprets it, isn't actually where it's coming from. But if you look at this, it's your fluids of your body and your nerves.
Okay.
Okay, now, you know, your blood, your lymph, your cerebral spinal fluid, the fluid that flows between your cells, interstitial fluid. And then it's your nervous system. Now, in our modern times, in this period of time, the chi system that is under massive attack, and the one that is the easiest one to get into so you can recognize what's traveling through it, so you can recognize the chi is your nervous system.
Okay. So that's the one where it's the most obvious.
And given that stress is the whole thing that the modern life is about,
Yes.
stress is first hitting your nerves, and then it hits your fluids.
Yes. So then the lymphatic system all gets jammed up, so things stop
Again, that's
moving,
fluids.
waste clearing, and the blood doesn't circulate so freely around the body.
Sure.
Yeah.
You can't actually, yes, either the fluids can affect your nervous system, but today, given just the nature of how society is, it's much more that the nervous system is affecting the fluids.
Yes.
You know, given all the anxiety, given all the, shall we say, hyper adrenaline, that's all flowing through the nerves.
Okay, so the bit I'm trying to understand, the pieces I'm trying to put together, when you had this really difficult time after the car accident and you were in all this pain, and then you were talking about all these memories came up in your body, or the programs came up, that's stored in the cells of your body, is that
You
correct?
know, let me put it to you this way. The experience you had it's in your cells, it's in your nervous system, it's in your fluid, it's in your ligaments, it's in your
Everywhere,
fascia.
then. Yeah.
Oh, you couldn't tell where it was going to come from.
Because people think, well, bad memories are in my head, but that's
No.
it's
No.
not as simple
No,
as
no,
that,
no,
is
no,
it?
no, no, no. What's in your head, if it doesn't translate through your body, you'll never notice it. I mean, when you're noticing something going on in your head, you're not noticing your brain. You're noticing your nervous system. You're noticing how it's hitting your body in different ways. It's just that it's attached to thoughts, because people then start thinking weird stuff, and they start thinking, well, okay, if I do a thought, that means it's coming from my brain. No, it just could be that your brain is being catalyzed by it, or it goes both ways. I mean, if you could not feel pain, why would you care if there's pain? Why would you care? If it's only thought. I mean, I had to go through opening up those channels where, and it was really obvious, open up the channels, have less pain. Don't open up the channels, get more pain. But we have something where, my family is Greek, okay? Long, long time ago, Byzantine Empire, all that kind of stuff. We were kind of big shots in that, which doesn't mean much today. I mean, that and running a restaurant's really not much different if you come right down to it. But if you look at that, there was the idea back to the old days in Athens and all that of a sound mind and a sound body. The only trouble is that the sound mind became the fact that you were thinking. You had thoughts that were reasonably ordered, and then you had, like, you know, boom, you had good muscles. The Taoist thought takes what the body and the mind are way further. They start actually getting, okay, wait a second. What is actually going on here? What are the layers? So they, in one sense, a bit like an engineer or a scientist. It's not enough that something is poetically happening, which is also true, metaphorically happening, but then how is it actually happening?
Because you talk about different, I'm just got a quote from your book here,
Sure.
where you talk about, it was amazing how many layers of defined nerve pain I found in my body. For example, feelings of failure came up, previous emotional trauma, many from early childhood, had to be released. So when you say there's layers of defined nerve pain, there's thousands of layers of...
Uh-huh.
So this is where we've got memories, we've got trauma that's stored, and it's still one on top of the other? Is that how it works?
Let's put it this way. Yeah, metaphorically, they're one on top of the other. They're all there at the same time, but they surface as though they were stacked.
Right. So to be clear on the emotional level, it's very much on an energetic level as well as a psychological level, or maybe not as well as, but anyway, an energetic level is necessary to get in touch with that trauma or that memory. You don't have to process the whole thing as such, do you, in terms of understanding?
You just have to release it.
You have to release it, okay.
The classic phrase in Taoism, right? We live in a psychological society. We live in an educated society. So that means that, well, you know the cause, you know the reasons, and therefore you should be able to do something with it. Well, knowing why something is going on does not say you can implement any change about it. It only says you recognize it's there. Okay, I recognize Warren Buffett's a billionaire. It doesn't do me much good about becoming a billionaire. Okay? What you have is that the phrase they've used in Taoism for thousands of years about human suffering and the millions of ways you can have it is very simple. If you're on a torture table, Chinese torture's like always been perfectly cool with Chinese governments throughout history. Okay, just like it was in the Middle Ages in England. Kings, without a torture chamber, they were out of business. That's all there is to it. So anyway, if you're on a torture table and they're really torturing you, would you rather know why you're on a torture table? Would you rather like to know what the torturer had for breakfast? Would you like to know how the instruments that are torturing were made? Would you like to know exactly how they produce pain? Or would you rather get off the table?
We all know the answer, yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the Taoists always go right for the chase of how do you resolve it. Not recognizing is a first step to resolving. Otherwise, you have no idea what you're trying to resolve. But you need to have an implementation process to resolve it. That method through which got me past my parents, which got me through more things in my life that I can count about, things that shatter most people.
So can you just...
Inner dissolving.
Okay, can you just very briefly explain inner dissolving? I realise it's going to be only a very brief overview of it.
Very simply. If you can recognize what's going on inside you, if you're not totally numb, and in which case it doesn't much matter, you can't do it anyway, there are 4 conditions which will give you an idea that your chi is blocked. You don't have to understand any of it. They're only until you can recognize what blocked chi is for itself, then it's like that. It would be like if you had a child who's a virgin, they can see books, they can see the internet, they can see this, they go in sex, this, and that happens, but you don't really quite get what it is until you have sex, because it's not exactly the same as the pictures. Okay? But okay, the 4 conditions. Strength, which ultimately can become stubbornness, or put it this way, that's the ego. That, what we call in the West the ego is just you feel strong in a position, and so quote unquote we say someone who has an ego. Tension, 2 things fighting inside yourself. That could be any one of a billion things inside you. This one is the hardest one in many ways. Something that doesn't feel quite right, but you don't know what it is. A simple example, take what happened to you in your mommy's tummy. Take what happened to you, everything you took in while your mother was pregnant, all the things you have taken in without even recognizing they were happening, because they were happening on the side of you. Okay, so you don't know what it is, but it's really bothering you. Okay, it's really bothering you. You know, nowadays, okay, we'll open you up, we'll put a little chip inside you, and you will be tortured all day long. But if you weren't awake when the chip was put in, you know, you won't know where it's coming from, but believe me, you know that you're hurting. And the last one is contraction. In many spiritual traditions, especially Indian ones, the nature between enlightenment and unenlightenment is often described as your mind or your soul or your being is contracted, or it opens up to all and everything, quote unquote non-separation. Contraction means there is separation. There's no 2 ways about that. So different metaphors are used. These 4 things give you an idea of block chi. Okay, so now we got block chi, right? So we start with that. So you recognize it. Now your mind, the totality of your being, and I will say that it really helps if you can go in the 4th time, which is beyond past, present, and future. It's not the eternal now. It's just something that ain't those things, and there is another thing that's there. And it's not the now. But it is beyond past, present, and future. In Sanskrit, for example, they call that turiya. It means the 4th state. But you can stay in that kind of time because that's the only time that you really can resolve things in. Because the idea that things are sequential is just actually nonsense. It's only their appearance, it's not actually how they work. The stuff is all going on at once. then your mind goes into that blockage. It stays on it. And then you start trying to release it. Those 4 conditions, you want to relax. You're completely willing for it to give over and let go, but no demands. You're a bit like a hawk or a cat that's like just waiting for that mouse to come on. And when it releases, he's on it, but until then he just waits. But it's active waiting. It's not passively, I mean, you're like, you're waiting for it because when it comes, it's only going to exist for a few microseconds. That's the only access point, and you got to be ready for it. So you go into that, and you keep on releasing, and as you start doing that, you start going, at a certain point, your motion starts becoming inward. And it's as though when you start moving inside yourself, you just move into a bigger and bigger place. So this is where you are going inside. Forget about what's out here. That's outer dissolving. That's another method. But this is the actual meditation. And this going in can take you into the deepest recesses of your karma, your psychic body, your your emotional, your mental body. The physical one, you don't need that stuff for. That outer dissolving will take care of that. But when we start talking about the real stuff that bothers people, the stuff that spirituality is about, the stuff that goes on even after you die and you get it again, this you have to go in and you release it. And the point is that you release it. This is the Taoist method. And they had this thousands of years before the Buddha ever showed up. You resolve it to emptiness. And I'm not going to go into what emptiness is because there's a whole lot of ways you can look at that, and it kind of has stages until you finally actually really get it. And when something goes to emptiness, it releases, it resolves. The basis upon it existing is gone. That's what emptiness does. You think you exist, you really find emptiness, you're going to get you don't. You think anything exists, but let me not take this too far because that can sound like, too intellectual. But you have to get to where you feel the release, and then inside of you open up into a dramatically bigger space.
But can you find out who you really are without going through this process?
I don't. Well, let's put it this way. Maybe someone else knows. I don't. That's how I did it.
So
that's the Taoist. That's the only thing. Try to understand, from the age of 6 until I was somewhere in my mid-30s, I also, at one time, for example, spent 10.5 months in a cave where I was doing, tantric and kundalini practices all day long, every waking second. Nah, didn't dent it. This is the only way I know how to get there, although I must say that if we look at, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, which has incredible parallels to Taoism, specifically the Dzogchen and Mahamudra tradition as opposed to the Tantric tradition. Okay? I think they probably came from the same place because their methodologies are they're too tight. There's too many points of confluence. Probably. And even they both say they kind of came from that direction, the Kunlun's and all that in China. But I know one way it can be done. I know the Taoist way, that's why I'm a Taoist lineage holder, and in all the things I tried previous to that, I didn't find anything that can do it. Now, which is not to say other things couldn't do it. I just can only talk personally.
Okay. I'm looking at the clock. We've got about 8 minutes left.
Okay.
And I want you to really use the last 8 minutes for people, just explain for people that maybe, I think most people that watch Conscious TV have done some meditation, they've maybe done some Tai Chi, they've certainly read stuff, they've watched stuff. They have a few basic elements there. If they want to take their search deeper, what would be your suggestions for them?
Well, first of all, this is a classic question that's been asked for thousands of years because there's always been, in cultures that have had interest in meditation, multiple methods of doing it. I'd say a couple of things. If you're slick enough to do it on your own, then you don't need to study with anybody. Now, since generally it's pretty much agreed by virtually everybody, lots of luck, that ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
The next thing is that you need to find someone who's actually been there and done it, because they then at least have some idea. Okay, so now that goes further. If your interest is of, let's say, a lower or a middle depth, okay? I mean, we're talking about drive now. We're talking about, commitment. We're talking about ambition. I mean, it's no different in doing it with spirituality than it is for doing it with anything else. If your interest is not that great, I say don't beat yourself up about learning with someone who's really just kind of not doing stuff that's very deep, because that's really all you want. And if that's really all you want, why in God's name are you getting in front of someone who's really, really good? Unless you want to open yourself up to the possibility. If you have a middle level, I would say in the West, this is a fact of most people. There are the believers, right? They just want to believe in somebody. In other words, I would put this, excuse me, I want to be sarcastic now. Mommy, mommy, mommy. I want to feel, well, if that's what you want, there's plenty of people who will satisfy that desire. They will be big mommy, they will be big daddy, they will try and make you secure. If you actually have a very deep interest in meditation, the last person you want to find is someone who makes you secure. Because what's going to happen if something makes you really, really secure? That is going to give you every opportunity you ever need to skive. You're just going to figure out a way to like really not do too much. So now, let's just say I really only speak from people of a higher level of interest, because that's what I do. I mean, I don't, I just don't do that other stuff. It's not my thing, I mean, really, I don't mind if other people do it, but I don't want to do it. Okay, the first thing is that there are people who have the basic mentality. They need to kind of understand what's going on. And I teach, I'm always showing how something works, because there's a chunk of people like that. And I also do it because the real nature of spiritual teaching really happens through mind-to-mind transmission. It doesn't happen through knowledge. Knowledge is of the mind. That's intellectual, that's of the mind, and you're trying to get beyond the mind, and it's not going to work. So it's really done through transmission. My teacher, for example, in Beijing, trained me to do that. I was trained and taught how to do it. Just the same way it's kind of at the deeper levels of Tibetan Buddhism. They teach people, and some people find it naturally when they do this satsang and they have it and they just kind of get it. But we were trained how to do it to an incredible level of precision, because the Taoists who have been described, Ninim, for example, described them as a scientist of ancient China. That's how they look at everything. They're precision freaks. They want to get how it can replicate with the greatest consistency. To do that, you got to understand what the hell it is, because if you don't understand what it is, you're just, you're dancing around. Some people get it, some people don't. That's it. But you have a low yield. It's like an investment that gives you 1% a year. It doesn't make you happy. Okay? They like to go at least 10. So if you look at this now, okay, so you find someone. Now, when you find someone, there's several issues that come up, and you have to look at what they do carefully. Don't just do it because somebody has some piece of PR. Do they actually get what's going on? Next, look at the people around them. Are they actually shifting? If they're not shifting, then all you can really say is, I don't know how much is going on here. But if they're actually shifting, then if you think you can trust them, and you don't have to trust them like, I have to love you like my mother, although some people like to do that. I love you like my father. Do you think they actually know what they're doing? And this person does. And then like anything else, if you got a good mentor, well, bloody listen to the person. Then here's the even more important part. Practice what you hear. Do it. Don't think about it. Do it.
It's the commitment, isn't it? That's a great starting point. If you really commit.
If you call doing it commitment, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If you want to eat food, you look at the food. Oh, wow, it's magic. Like, talk about, we'll tell you how this is the greatest. If you don't eat the thing, what good does it do you? See, unless you just like looking at pictures of food, and there are people who like to read gourmet magazines. But if you want to do it, you've got to taste it. You've got to taste it for it, and to do that, you have to practice. The classic phrase, I'll take it, in Chinese, the Taoist phrase, 师父进门，连载革新, which means the teacher takes you into the gate. That means like the gate of knowledge. Because everything in China is a gate. You go on the other side is whatever there is, But the success comes from your own practice. 连载革新, ge means you as an individual, 心 means your heart, your effort, all of it. The Buddha's same thing says, I show you the path. You have to walk it. Nobody can give it to you. What they can do is they can take you and show you what if you do it. That's how everybody in history's been able to do it. So that's what I would recommend. And I don't, I'm not saying come to me, come to him, come to this one, come to that one. That's the burden of being an adult.
And how often do you practice now?
Practice what?
How often do you practice what you are?
You don't practice what you are what you are, or you're not.
Yeah, that's not a very good
I
question,
don't,
actually, yeah.
let's put it this way. I'm always practicing meditation.
Yeah,
There is no time I'm not.
yes.
You know, if you talk about how much do I practice martial arts or qigong, I don't know. I mean, I've been running qi through my body the whole time I've been having a conversation. I'm kind of at the phrase they have in Chinese is xin wu xin, form, no form. I kind of did so many forms I kind of passed to the point where it's very spontaneous in me. Because whereas it took me years of practice to get this to get online, now I can have anything go online instantly. So there is now it's about the flow of life.
Okay, it's a great place to finish. Now it is about the flow of life. Bruce, it's been fascinating. The time's been far too short, but we were always faced with the challenge of having a finite period to do the program. I'm going to show again 3 of Bruce's books. He's written about 12 in total. There's Relaxing into Your Being, the Tao of Letting Go, Opening the Energy Gates of Your Body.
And the next one that's coming out in November is Taoist Sexual Meditation, which is effectively the 4th volume. And to the best of my knowledge, that's the first time Lao Tzu's tradition of sexual meditation has ever appeared in print in the West.
Great. Okay, thanks again, Bruce. And thank you, everyone, for watching Conscience TV. And I think you all agree it was a fascinating program. Thank you. Goodbye.
My name is Bruce Frantzis, and what I'll be showing you is the method of meditation that is central and somewhat unique to Lao Tzu's method of meditation in Taoism. Lao Tzu was 2,500 years ago, and what he is most known for in the West is a book he wrote that's called the Tao Te Ching, The Way and Its Power. I am told it is the 2nd most translated book in the world. Many people read it and many people find it fascinating, but this is the actual basic meditation method that Lao Tzu did, which does not appear in any of his books and which is not very well known. I learned this studying in China for many, many, many years. First, sit up. Do your best to sit in a way that's comfortable. Do the best that your back is straight rather than leaning or clumping in some fashion. And just sit either on the floor or with your feet flat on the floor. Adjust your breathing until it's smooth and regular. So it's not being spasmodic. So you're not holding it, so you just relax your breath. So take 3 deep breaths, and the first time just inhale, and then exhale and relax your breath. Now relax your breath on the inhale, and relax it more on the exhale. And then relax it as much as you can with both your inhale and your exhale. Let your mind simply settle down. Let your eyes close if you like, or keep them open. And just let yourself sink into and become present to your body. As you exhale, let your mind drop down towards your belly and feel your body. Feel your body. Let go of all the events of the day. And if thoughts come into your head, just feel your mind. Regardless of what the thoughts are, just feel your mind. Feel your nerves. Now, keeping your feet flat on the floor, become aware of 4 conditions. strength. You feel strong. People feel strong when they're angry. There's a certain kind of strength you feel when you're right. There's even a certain kind of strength when you're when you're depressed, that you feel somehow at least secure. When people feel strong, they feel secure. Now just recognize what that feels like. Don't do anything with it. You don't change it. Just recognize it for what it is. And now tension, two things fighting with each other. But feel for this. Don't think about it. Don't make a picture of it. Feel it. Tension are two things fighting against each other. Maybe it's just a blood vessel that's in spasm. Maybe it's thoughts in your mind. Maybe it's one emotion. Maybe it's another emotion. But the sense of the tension will be the same regardless of the millions of causes that could be causing it. So don't worry about the cause. Worry about the effect. Now feel for something where something doesn't feel quite right, but you don't know what it is. And especially, you don't know what it is. Don't feel you're supposed to understand it. Just recognize that something that's not right is happening inside you. And now, simply focus on contraction. The mind closing in on itself, the sense of the body closing in on itself. So now recognizing these, each one will have a feeling or an energy. Go from the top of your head and just move down your body. And wherever you feel one of these, strength, tension, something that doesn't feel quite right, especially if you don't know what it is, let your mind simply stop and rest on that place. Feel it, experience it. Don't try and figure it out. Anything you think it might be, anything you judge it's good or bad, anything you say, oh, I understand why, forget it. You may or may not understand it, and it's not important to understand it. To recognize it, and the same with contractions, and doesn't feel right, and tension and strength. If any of those things shows up in any way you could remotely imagine, then just let your mind settle in that spot. Now let as much of your awareness as you can start moving into that place and be willing, without a demand, I would like it to release. It should release. Satan, be gone. Go away. Let it just soften. First, just soften. Because it always will be hard. Let it soften and begin to start moving inside it. And if then you find something else replaces it, but still it has the feeling of one of those four conditions, keep softening it. And continue to do so. Soften and relax. Like ice turning to water. Hard to soft. Now this is usually as far as most people get in the beginning, but who knows? Fortune may shine. And keep on going into that again and again and again until it may be that at some point, at some undefined time, it will suddenly release. And when it releases, it will be as though all the energy in it has released. And this is what in Taoism they call going into emptiness. And you'll know if you reach that emptiness, because it will be as though that space inside you just gets bigger and bigger. If that space inside you felt like a dot, it'll open up into a room. If it felt bigger, you'll feel like you opened up to an internal space as big as a cavern. And just stay there until, at some point on its own, without you making it happen or stopping it from happening, that space will return to the normal space it was before you went inside it. At that point, just go down to the next place that's blocked. Now, this is the best case scenario if it happens, but there is a second case scenario that happens quite commonly. People can't release into emptiness in the beginning. It takes some practice. But if you find yourself in a place where you feel the energy blocked, but it won't release, there will come a point, there will come a time, there will come an awareness, a recognition. You're going to get that it happens. You're going to feel as though if I do this for the next 5 minutes or 5,000 years, it's not going to shift. It's not going to shift. It's hit as far as it's going to go. And with your mind, move the chi that's in that blockage to the next place, moving down your body that feels as though you have tension or strength, something that doesn't feel quite right, or some type of contraction. And do it again. Only when you go from the one to the next one and dropping down your body, take all the energy that you could feel and the point that could not resolve and just take it to the next lower point in your body. And there are more ways this is done that get a little bit more precise, but this is a big overview. And then again, those two energies combine, and again, you do your best. Ice to water, water to space. When you finish doing this, whether you do it for 5 minutes or you do it for hours on end, sometimes energy can get stuck in your head. And this is something that's useful whenever energy gets stuck in your head, whether it's working for a computer or it's doing some sort of meditation. Rub your palms so your hands get warm. Take your hands and just bring it down your face. And you take the energy out of your head and bring it back into your body, which is always a problem in the modern time because people get too much energy stuck in their heads. And then whenever you feel you're done, open your eyes and wait till the inside of your body, if your eyes were closed, regularizes with your outside environment till they're smooth before you get up and do something different. Well, thank you very much. I was taught this method by a direct lineage holder who traces his lineage back to Lao Tzu. And I know that because there were a few times when literally for a month he said, and from him it went to him, to him. And this guy did this. Next few people didn't do too much, but then this person did this. And he literally going back, not through generations, going back through hundreds of generations. So anyway, as much as I understand, this is the original tradition of Lao Tzu. It's the only meditation I teach. And I consider myself very fortunate to have ever learned it. And I hope it helps you. Thank you very much. Until we meet again.